welcome to Tell Me. I want to introduce myself today because I'm here as a woman and a mother to say you are not alone. 1 in 3 women worldwide experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. Now, recent estimates suggest that women might be more at risk dying of violence than of cancer. We might be all familiar with the word pandemic, but this concerns half of the population. The UN calls it the shadow pandemic. Now, it might be uncomfortable to talk about what goes on behind closed doors, but this is the real danger emerging from this pandemic, as women and girls are trapped in their houses with their abusers, unable to access to safety or support. Now, during this program, we will hear from a woman who was nearly beaten to death by her partner and fled with her baby and survived. That woman is Vivian McGrath, joining us today on the program. Thank you very much, Vivian, for joining us on Tell Me today. And also we have Alia Yassir joining us, who is the Regional Director, UN Women in Europe and Central Asia. Thank you, both of you. So starting off with you, Alia, we have now many women worldwide have sent in videos and shared their opinions and concerns with us. Let's watch Savannah there from Washington, D.C. first and take it from there.
We are in a double pandemic. Domestic violence abuses have only continued and increased in the age of COVID-19. Governments worldwide have imposed lockdowns to contain the virus, but those same restrictions have increased the risks associated with domestic violence, especially for women, children, and LGBTQ+ individuals. However, it's important to remember that domestic violence was unfortunately a global pandemic long before this outbreak. According to data collected by the United Nations, 243 million women and girls between the ages of 15 and 49 worldwide were subjected to sexual and physical violence by an intimate partner in the last 12 months. Today, rising numbers of sick people, unemployment, increased anxiety and financial stress, and a scarcity of resources have set the stage for an exacerbated domestic violence crisis. This could be me. It could be your sister. It could be your friend. These stories are not isolated to just one region of the world. So what can we do? As the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and the United Nations have emphasized, countries and the private sector must incorporate a human rights and gender lens in their responses to COVID-19 to address this new reality. But most importantly, it starts in a broader sense with education and empowerment, because as the proverb says, women hold up half the sky.
Alia, just maybe as we have mentioned some of the statistics there, but of course you have more data. So what do we know at the moment? Do we know actually what the lockdown or the period of the coronavirus has caused?
Data is a critical component in terms of what we would expect to be done to try and understand this already complex issue before COVID and now how it is exacerbated by COVID. But our estimates are that for every 3 months of a lockdown, there is an additional 15 million women who will be affected by violence. And we know that the numbers are already high, so these additional numbers are extremely worrying. We have heard across the globe, and the numbers really vary and the sources of information vary, but you've seen spikes in cases, in terms of reported cases of violence during lockdown that have gone from 20% all the way up to 100%, depending on the country, depending on the service providers. And what we would say is to err on the side of caution when you're looking at numbers of reporting, because some countries have reported either a leveling off or a reduction. But this is not really to say that the incidence is going down. It's just that the reporting is going down. And maybe that is because there are other factors at play. There is, they're not getting the services that they need, and therefore they are less likely to report the cases. There hasn't been an adequate response.
Now let's meet Vivian. Vivian is a domestic abuse survivor. She's written a book called The Unbeatable, and she helps people. She helps especially women going through domestic abuse. Now, Vivian, tell us your story, please.
I was very young and I was in a relationship, and it gradually got more and more violent until one day he almost killed me. And I'll have to correct you, I wasn't almost beaten to death, but what happened was he just went out of control. It was after an argument that was just insignificant. And I don't know how it suddenly blew up, but he just blew up and he started strangling me. And it was absolutely terrifying because I heard this voice that wasn't mine, but I knew it was me. And it was this rasping sound because I had no air. And so I was just trying to squeeze out this awful sound, and I was begging for my life. And then I suddenly thought, the last person I'm going to see, the last face I'm going to see is the man that I love as he murders me and our child. It was absolutely the most terrifying thing I've ever been through in my life. And everything went into slow motion, and I suddenly saw my parents and felt their presence as they saw the corpse of their child, and it was just horrific.
That's powerful words there, Vivian. Powerful and courageous to come out and actually speak about it and be there for women who are actually going through domestic abuse. So now let's bring back then, we will hear more about you in here, but let's bring in Alia and first watch the video from Umayma.
Hello, hi Ayca, this is Umayma, Palestinian living in Jordan. Domestic and intimate partner violence are serious problems. A global surge has been reported during lockdown. Reasons might be lack of communication between couples and the very brief family time. Also, increased strain because of security, health or money worries, whether because they lost their jobs or because of cases of drug addiction, which also were revealed during lockdown. I believe in some of the cases violence pre-existed between couples, but it's always been unrevealed or underestimated, perhaps because of the financial dependence or because of the fear of consequences of revealing it, like divorce. Sometimes lack of emotional and financial support. In my opinion, there should be a third party in the form of an organization that offers both emotional and financial support to all abused women, encourages them to speak up their minds and stand up for their rights.
Now, Alia, what's the relationship between lockdown and domestic abuse?
As you heard in the video, one of the main points that was raised was these additional stressors that you have with lockdown. So you can have concerns about health conditions, you can have concerns about job, economic security, you have increased burden of schooling and care, you have people put together in a space for longer periods of time. That is one stressor that most people can relate to. But when you're talking about situations of violence and domestic violence in particular, with lockdown measures, you're basically giving more power and control to the perpetrator of violence against the victim. You're also isolating the victims socially as well as physically. So they do not have access to the social networks or the services that would be able to support them. You also have constraints on the service providers because the way that you're able to provide services has to radically change. So what we've seen is breakdown in referral mechanisms, for example, that worked under normal conditions do not work anymore under lockdown conditions. And so you have to change all the protocols, etc. And so even to provide services like counseling or providing legal advice, and what we're seeing, even access to justice is severely constrained. And IT, information technology, information and communication technology is now playing an extremely important role, but these capacities and resources are not readily available to all the service providers.
So let's now watch the video from Jenny in London.
Hi Ayca, it's Jenny, a researcher from London. I worked on a helpline for survivors of sexual violence, and one of the things we would tell people was, this is not your fault, because 9 out of 10 times they would already have started to internalise feelings of shame or guilt that they'd somehow let it happen. And I think there's a reason for this. I think the way that we report violence against women and girls, there's often a suggestion or a hint of there being something the woman did or didn't do that caused the violence, a reason. There's usually a reason given for some sort of violence or attack on a woman. And I know of a case personally where I saw this happen, and I looked at it further and saw how common it is, and it's just horrible. So it might seem flippant to go from talking about violence against women and girls to talking about how we talk about it, but I do think there's something we need to fix here. I'm a mother now, and I feel like I want to protect my young son from how our society talks about girls for as long as I can. You know, even the minor stuff I feel petty about, but the throwing or crying like a girl, because what my partner and I really want to do is raise a man who can value his own self without feeling the need to devalue the lives of others.
Now, Vivian, there are two factors that Jenny raises actually, which I want to ask to you. First of all, as media plays a significant part in shaping this language, how much of it do you think is the problem here? Is it the way we talk? And also, she mentioned about raising a son, and you yourself have raised sons. So how do we educate them?
I think, look, it's really complex, and there's a lot of this thing that the media talks about, that the guy was depressed about losing his job, or he was jealous of her, or whatever, and as though there's any excuse for it, or there's sort of the implication that she's brought it on herself. You know, I think, yes, I do believe that we need to educate boys, but I also think we need to educate women, and I know that people might see this as victim blaming, but you know, there was something about me that I did keep attracting these abusive types over and over and over again, right from when I was a little girl, and pedophiles would target me. And I sort of grew up to think, you know, what is it that I can change? Because I can't change the millions of narcissists and abusers out there in the world. But what I realized was that I could change me, and I could bulletproof myself against them. And so I realized that, you know, they are very good at detecting. They're real predators, and they're very good at grooming and preying on vulnerable women and men, but I'll talk about women because it's usually women. And so when I was recovering, I thought, well, what is it that I can do to not attract this anymore? And I'm not saying that we attract it and we're to blame for it. But if I could build my sense of self-worth, my sense of self-esteem, have boundaries that were so high that any predator, when they tested them and tried to push them, because that is what coercive control is all about, they look for those that they deem vulnerable enough to be groomed, able to manipulate, and then abuse. And I had to ask myself the very difficult question: what is it about me that inadvertently they could see was vulnerable and able to groom and manipulate? And secondly, why did I ignore the red flags and warning signs that many other women didn't? And once I took my focus off the abuser and put it onto me, build my sense of self-worth and boundaries, I then led by example to my son. So I then attracted a really healthy relationship, and he became his stepfather, and together we then showed him what healthy love looked like, what a healthy relationship looked like. My husband showed him what a man really is like, and how he respects women and treats me kindly and with respect. And my son actually said to my husband, who's his stepfather, the other day, "You've shown me what a real man is." And so we led by example and showed him what healthy love looked like.
So, Vivian, what do you say to the people you help? The first things you say, especially when they feel trapped, and to look out for those warning signs, and to how to get out of that situation. I know that it's not the same for everyone, but what do you tell them?
Well, the first thing is you need to recognize you are in an abusive relationship, because many, many, many people who come to me are not even sure that they are. And that is how brilliantly manipulative these people are. And it's coercive control, it's brainwashing. And as I said, they start to test your boundaries, and if they see that your boundaries fall down, they test again. And they're gaslighting, you know, when they you know that there's behavior that's not good, and you question it, and then they say, well, you're imagining it. You're exaggerating it. And they shift the blame very quickly onto you. So you start to change your behavior to try and please them, to stop the abuse happening. So you take on a lot of that blame, you take on that shame, you're not sure whether you're being abused. It's very, very complicated. But the worst thing is, I also say to them, coercive control is now deemed a crime in the UK. It's very successful brainwashing. You are not to blame for it. The second thing is, codependency is an addiction. And what happens is they love bomb you. They target someone who's very low in self-esteem and who's vulnerable, and then they love bomb you, and they tell you everything you want to hear, that you're the greatest thing in the world. They make you feel amazing. And then what they do is they gradually take away that love. So you think, oh, what is it that I've done that they're not giving me that anymore? So you try harder, you try more, do more, try to please more, love them more, prove to them more that you're worthy of their love. And this is what they want. They set you up to crave them, and it becomes like a drug. And then they show you that high again, and you think, oh, thank goodness, I've got that high back. I feel better about myself. So you build up this trauma bond, which in the end is like Stockholm syndrome. You almost crave the very thing that abuses you and hurts you, because they have destroyed your self-esteem so much that then they become and also they isolate you from family and friends. They isolate you from support networks. They really take control of your very sense of worth and happiness.
Those are very powerful words there, and also good to talk about and to mention. But also we have to remember that we're talking about worldwide issues. So not everyone is in the same place. Not everything is the same for everyone. Not everyone can receive maybe the same support or help out there. And there's a good mention about this by Huda Jawad from London. Let's watch that first.
Hello, my name is Huda Jawad, and I am the co-founder of the Faith and End Violence Against Women and Girls Coalition. We were founded in March of 2020, and we came together as a group of activists and specialist services because we recognise that women from faith communities and ethnic and black minority communities do not receive the support that they need or deserve. We know that up to 2 calls a minute are received from the police to report domestic abuse. We know that 1 in 3 women will experience some form of violence in their lifetime in the UK. We know that up to 650,000 children will either witness or be victims of domestic abuse in this country per year. We also know that many women from black and minoritized and faith backgrounds do not report to the police or to specialist services because they fear that they will not be able to get the help they need, that they will be misunderstood. They fear racism and prejudice, a lack of cultural sensitivity. They also worry that perhaps their immigration status, if it's not regular, will mean that they will be detained, deported, that children will be taken away. We also know that some find English as a challenge and as a language they are unable to communicate directly. Some will also fear that actually that they are the cause of the abuse and that they have done something wrong. Sometimes they are mistakenly controlled or coerced into believing that actually their faith or their culture enables this kind of abuse. And also some don't actually know that what they're living through is abuse, because abuse does not have to be physical. It can be sexual, it can be emotional, it can be financial, and in many cases, particularly for faith communities, it is also religious or spiritual abuse. And we at the Faith and End Violence Against Women and Girls Coalition are really keen to support survivors, faith communities, and also specialist organisations to support and deal better with survivors from domestic abuse, survivors of domestic abuse from faith communities.
Now, Alia, Huda sheds light to another aspect of the problem, as black and minority ethnic women and girls already face structural inequality, but also gender, race, religion and class. Do we recognise this danger?
No, absolutely. I mean, it is something that is recognized, but again, perhaps is not getting as much attention as we've discussed previously. Numbers don't reveal all the facts, but it's important to look into the numbers in greater depth, because we need to disaggregate a little bit, because it's, aside from the factors that you've mentioned, the experience of a woman also through her lifetime, so whether she is younger, older, whether she is living with a disability or not, all of these factors intersect with each other and shape an individual's experience. And so we cannot think that all experiences are equal, that all solutions are equal. As I mentioned earlier, we have to really think in different terms. And we have to question even our own systems all the time.
We have now a report, which is a recent campaign you probably came across on Instagram. You might have shared a photo of yourself, a black and white photo in support of women. But this mysterious photo, do you know where it originated from and why? Let's watch Julida Ayca's report.
It began as a challenge to raise awareness about gender-based violence. Women from every corner of the world, Africa, the Middle East, North America and Europe, came together to take part in a social media campaign turned worldwide phenomenon. #challenge accepted. Millions flooded Instagram feeds with black and white self-portraits to encourage female solidarity. The challenge dates back to 2016, where it was used to raise cancer awareness. Pınar Gültekin was a 27-year-old university student with a bright future. She was murdered by a jealous ex-boyfriend. Gültekin has become yet another grim statistic of violence against women, not only in Turkey, but globally. Turkish women not only took to the streets, but also to social media to express their outrage, posting monochrome photographs of themselves to signify they too could become the next victim of gender-based violence.
It's really good to have such an international campaign on Instagram. We had protests in Beşiktaş and Kadıköy districts last week. We organized a march and it was really powerful. There has been an outcry following the death of Pınar. I think people are angry and revolting even more collectively now.
While this campaign has raised some awareness, as celebrities picked up on the trend, the original context appears to have been lost on most users and has now morphed into a light-hearted display of female solidarity. Julie Dager, TRT World.
By starting this black and white challenge, we try to show all the world that how we can give color to life by using our colorless photos. Both being on health profession and also on the education part, I believe that no one can limit any woman just to heal and also to educate all people all around. And not only giving the soul and the life to all human beings born, we also want to smile for a stronger future.
Now, that was incredible to watch how that social media challenge went worldwide and everyone shared it. Well, now we have come to the end of the programme. Now, Vivian and Alia, I want to end on a sentence from both of you for now and the future to ponder on just very shortly. First, Vivian, and then Alia.
I think if two men were dying every week from this sort of violence, then governments would take it seriously. And I think that's shocking.
Now, Alia, over to you.
I just want to say that what we just saw, which was very moving, is inspiring to us because it shows us the power of social movements, the power that we have as individuals to work as a group to dismantle the structures that perpetuate discrimination and violence, that continue to blame the victims. We have the opportunity to shift the narrative and also hold perpetrators to account to end this shadow pandemic once and for all.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, Vivian McGrath and Alia Yassir, for joining the programme today. It was a pleasure talking to you. It meant a lot for me to be talking about this topic here today. So thank you very much for joining Tell Me. Now, next week on Tell Me, we will be focusing on our brothers and sisters in Beirut. The explosion in the Lebanese port killed and injured so many, but also left 250,000 people homeless. So it wrecked homes and livelihoods. Now, we want to know how you're coping and how we can help. So share with me. You can write to me on my Instagram account, Chachai. Do stay safe and sane until next week.